Hey guys, welcome to Red 50. Thank you for tuning into another video. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why I think my Mustang GT, or any Mustang GT for that matter, is better than a Mustang Ecoboost. I've driven my fair share of Mustang Ecoboost and almost considered one when I was buying my 2019 Mustang GT. I also rented a 2020 Mustang Ecoboost Premium recently for a very long period, which I actually really enjoyed driving. Matter of fact, I really enjoyed driving that Mustang Ecoboost Premium, the 2020 model, and there are some things that are definitely much better on the Mustang Ecoboost than the Mustang GT. I did make a similar video as to why I think 5 reasons why I think the Mustang Ecoboost is actually better than the Mustang GT. So if you're interested in that kind of video, make sure you check out that video so you get a perspective from the Mustang GT's owner. Now, there are a couple key items that I do want to highlight before we dive right into the video, because I understand the Mustang GT costs significantly more than the Mustang Ecoboost. Base for base is about $9,000 difference, so it is expected to be better in pretty much all ways you can think of. However, the Mustang Ecoboost on its own is a pretty good deal. I mean, for $27,000 base, you get rear-wheel drive, turbocharged engine, and relatively lightweight compared to other Mustangs in the lineup. This video is intended for someone who's debating between the two, maybe considering Ecoboost Premium to the base GT. So therefore, the price difference between the Mustang Ecoboost Premium and the base GT isn't as much. So you may be thinking like, okay, maybe it's not worth spending all that extra cash for Mustang GT when you're probably not going to use all of that power. All right, so now that is out of the way, let's dive right into the video. Alright, so number one has to be the sound. I know you can't really compare the both because you're comparing a 5-liter V8 to a 2.3 4-cylinder engine, but the sound, in my opinion, is a very huge part of the experience of owning a Mustang, and that's personally the reason why I went with the 2006 Mustang GT over 2011 V6 back when I was getting my older Mustang. And even though the power was the same, I feel like the sound in itself, the deep rumble of the V8 is just experienced on its own, because you're not drag racing every day, you're not racing stoplight to stoplight every day. So the power numbers matter, of course, you're going to feel the power, but even just going slow, just hearing the burble of the exhaust, the deep note of the exhaust, the V8 just does it better than the 4-cylinder, unfortunately. And there are some good 4-cylinder sounding cars like WRX STI, Focus RS with even the same engine sounds pretty good, but for some reason the Mustang Ecoboost manages to sound pretty bad with most aftermarket exhaust. I mean, you have to listen to Corsa Extreme on my 2019 Mustang GT, and you just can't say no to that sound. Take a look for yourself. Okay, so number 2 on my list is obviously the performance. It's no secret the Mustang GT is going to have a better performance than the Mustang Ecoboost. The Mustang GT is rated at 460 horsepower and 420 foot-pound of torque, compared to the Mustang Ecoboost, which is rated at 310 horsepower and 350 foot-pound of torque. And because of these numbers, the performance numbers you're looking at, you're going to come in 0 to 60 in about 3.9 seconds for the Mustang GT, while the Mustang Ecoboost is going to do it in 5.1 seconds. Similar differences that also carry over to the quarter mile time. The Mustang Ecoboost is going to do it around 13.7 seconds, while the Mustang GT is going to do the quarter mile run in about 12.1 seconds when equipped with the performance pack and the 10-speed automatic transmission. I mean, that difference alone is huge. I know I said we're not racing our cars day to day, you don't live at the track, but this kind of difference you are going to feel on the daily drive. Of course, like if you're just commuting and cruising around on the highway, then it may not be a significant deal for you. But if you're going to be using, like if you're buying a muscle car, if you're buying a pony car, sports car, whatever you want to call the Mustang, it's kind of expected to have some sort of power associated with it. Alright, so the third item on my list why I think the Mustang GT is better than the Mustang Ecoboost is the mod potential. This one is actually kind of tricky because I did mention that on my Ecoboost video as well. In terms of bang for your buck, Mustang Ecoboost is actually slightly better for a street-driven car with maybe minor bolt-ons, just because of the fact that it has a turbo engine. Just a simple tune can result in so much more power. So like a tune and maybe basic bolt-ons can probably get you about 50-60 horsepower and about 80-90 foot-pound of torque on the Mustang Ecoboost, whereas the GT, similar dollar spend, will probably result in about, I don't know, 30-35 horsepower at best, and similar numbers for the torque. So bang for buck does go for the Ecoboost, but the potential to really modify the GT or the 5.0 V8 engine is just endless. I mean, the internals on these are so strong. People are making 700-800 horsepower without any trouble, and you're kind of getting to that territory without any concern with the reliability. The engine is still stock, so if you want to build your block, you can probably cross 1,000 horsepower no problem. So, and even some of the basic bolt-ons, you can get the Mustang GT to pretty close to 500 wheel horsepower, you know, 480 wheel horsepower with like maybe E85 headers and, you know, tune and intake. You can probably get there. With Ecoboost, to get even like 450 wheel horsepower, you're looking at upgrading the turbo, and the engine on that Mustang Ecoboost is not as strong as the Mustang GT. So 450 rear wheel horsepower is pretty much the cap as how far you can go on the Mustang Ecoboost, unfortunately. Alright, so the fourth one on my list is actually the gas mileage. Now, I know you probably are shocked that why is the gas mileage better on Ecoboost. It's not necessarily better, but it's more consistent, if I want to put it that way. So basically, the Mustang Ecoboost is rated at about 21 city, 32 highway, and I want to say 25 or 26 combined, whereas the Mustang GT is rated at 16 city, 25 highway, and combined about 19 miles per gallon. So as you can see, Ecoboost does better with the gas mileage, but I've personally done road trips in my Mustang GT, and I've seen it as up to 28.7 miles per gallon where I'm driving this car very gently. The trick with the Mustang Ecoboost is that it's a very good commuter car in terms of getting your gas mileage. If you're just commuting, most of the time, you're gonna have pretty good gas mileage and you won't have to worry about it. You're able to get whatever EPA is suggesting that you should be able to get with your Mustang Ecoboost. However, since it's a turbo engine, if you're always in the boost with your Mustang Ecoboost, so if you're driving a little bit hard, there's people all over the forums averaging on 22, 23 miles per gallon. And for me, even though I have fun with this car and really try to have, you know, get on the car, enjoy it, and not drive like a granny, I'm seeing about 20, 21 miles per gallon on average too. And my average drive does consist of highway and city. So as you can see, the difference ends up being only 2-3 miles per gallon, just because the naturally aspirated engine, whatever is rated at, it's able to achieve. Whereas the Mustang Ecoboost, if you're on a road trip, sure, you're gonna see all this low 30s, mid 30s on your miles per gallon. But if you're really having fun, you know, you're putting in sport mode, you're putting in track mode, you're just unfortunately not going to be able to see that kind of results for your gas mileage that you are able to do with the GT. Now, of course, the 10-speed automatic transmission does really help because it keeps the RPM so low. It keeps the RPM so low where you don't have to worry about your RPMs being high on the highway. So I think 10-speed really helps with that. But I mean, that's for both Mustang Ecoboost and the GT. So yeah, I mean, the gas mileage, when you're comparing on paper, Ecoboost is definitely ahead. But if you're driving your muscle, sports, pony car, whatever you want to call it, how it's supposed to be, you might not see the EP estimated gas mileage that EP is promising, or the Ford is promising for your Mustang Ecoboost, and the difference ends up being negligible. Now, the fifth and the last reason why I think the Mustang GT is better than the Mustang Ecoboost is the resale value. Now, given the current market condition, this may not be as applicable because used car prices are all over the place. But if you intend to buy one right now and you have the intention to sell in like maybe within a few years, once the market has settled down and is back to the normal being, you're definitely going to notice the resale value with the Mustang Ecoboost versus the GT. Unfortunately, there's a lot of rental cars that are Mustang Ecoboost, whether it's a base trim or the premium trim. So basically, you've got a lot of supply after a few years once these rental companies kind of offload their inventory into the market. So you've got a lot of supply, a lot of competition. In general, the prices are going to reflect that. You know, there's more supply, and you know, they're not going to command a premium in terms of the pricing. Versus the Mustang GT, yes, it's more expensive up front, but unfortunately it's seen as the real Mustang with the true V8 and all that stuff. So there are more car enthusiasts buying those type of Mustang GTs, whereas the Mustang Ecoboost, you know, a lot of young buyers want to buy it for the cool image, or you know, there are even girls or women who just don't really care much about cars, but they do want to, you know, Mustang has a heritage, it does look pretty cool, so they want it for that, and you know, they may not be committed to it for years down the road. Versus Mustang GT, most of the people who buy Mustang GTs are somewhat of car enthusiasts. They want the V8, that they're willing to put up with the terrible gas mileage and the high insurance rate and all that stuff because they want the V8. So yeah, the Mustang GT may cost you a little bit more upfront, but you're going to be able to recoup some of that cost when you go to sell the Mustang GT down the road. And compared to Mustang Ecoboost, where you're definitely going to take even more of a hit than you would have versus any other car, just because of the fact that there's so many rental Mustangs out there. And you know what? While we're here, I'll give you a bonus one too. Instead of 5, we'll make it 6. If you do go for the Mustang GT, and I'm not a huge fan of this, but you avoid the "it's not a real Mustang" comments and questions. Yes, you should be buying the car for yourself. You shouldn't care what other people think. You know, if that's what you like the Mustang Ecoboost, maybe it was the best financial decision for you, or you really don't care for the GT power. Unfortunately, the comments are always like, you know, why didn't you get a Mustang GT? Why would you get a Mustang with a 4-cylinder? For as long as I can remember, Mustang V6 and now the Ecoboost, and they're not seen as the real Mustangs or the car enthusiast Mustang. So Mustang GTs, you know, always takes the cake. So you kind of avoid those comments. I'm not a huge fan of it because to me, all Mustangs are Mustang. If it wasn't for these base Mustang, we wouldn't have the GTs, because the truth is Mustang Ecoboost and Mustang V6, when they were around, sells a lot more than the Mustang GT, because you have these car rental companies picking them up. It's also much cheaper, so people who just want a cool sports car, they'll go for that than the Mustang GT with the full commitment. So because of these base Mustangs or the base trim engines, we're able to have Mustang GTs. So unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it like that. They just want to, you know, everyone to get a Mustang GT. Maybe that's not the best financial decision for the one individual, or they personally don't care for that kind of power. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video on 5 reasons why I think the Mustang GT is better than the Mustang Ecoboost. I did a similar video on why I think 5 reasons why I think Mustang Ecoboost is better than the Mustang GT, so make sure you check that out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button, comment below why you personally went with the Mustang GT or the Ecoboost if you currently own one. And as always, subscribe to Red 50 for more Mustang content.